Good afternoon. We welcome you to the third of our unit record webinar trainings. We have one additional training scheduled for August the 25th, which is a couple of weeks from today. If you have questions, there should be a chat box in the pop-up controls that you have on your side. We ask that you use that chat box to send questions. We will be monitoring that and attempting to respond to those as we go. Joining me today for the presentation is Deborah Engelhardt, who is the Functional Analyst with the State Board for Community and Technical Colleges PeopleSoft Financial Aid. That is also known as CTC Link. Also with me is Marla Skelly, who is our Associate Director for Compliance here at the Student Achievement Council. And my name is Ann Boyles. I'm the Program Associate. I'd like to turn this program over to Marla.
Well, good afternoon, everybody. Just a little bit about myself. I come from the financial aid world. I'm going, honestly, into my fourth year at the Student Achievement Council, which surprises me a little. And prior to that, I've had experience in financial aid offices and as a consultant for software. So I've been around a while. This is our 51st year of the unit record, the same age as the Washington College Grant Program, which you all know it as, at least in its previous iteration, as the State Need Grant. We're all still getting used to calling it the WCG program, so hopefully we won't slip up in this presentation. I want to talk a little about what the purpose of the unit record is. And basically it was designed to provide institutional reports and profiles so that we can do institutional comparisons across the state. We use the information to measure the needs of our students, and we rely on this data for advocating on behalf of the students in the state of Washington. We get requests from the legislature and their staff members inquiring about the status of state aid, and this information helps us provide reports and information to them so that they can make adjustments as they need to. It also provides a centralized data repository. So there's one place to find this information, and it really cuts down on the ad hoc data requests that institutions would have if we didn't have this repository. The timeline is, it's already begun. The unit record manual is available electronically at the wasac.wa.gov site. And for those of you who are so excited and can't wait to get started, the unit record opened on Monday. So you can complete it and get it into us as soon as possible. The finalized report is due on October 5th, and we're asking that you please adhere to this deadline. We have a lot of work as an agency to get through so that we can provide the information to the legislature and to the institutions. So we need you to complete the report by October 5th. In the months of October and November, then Ann and I review that information, make sure things are the way they should be. And this is the time when you either hear primarily from Ann, but when she gets crazy busy with this, then I will step in and help. So you do hear from us in October and November. Last year, we really weren't able to get it completed until the first part of January, which really put us behind. There was a lot going on. We have worked really hard to try and make it a little more streamlined. We've looked at the edits and reworked some of those, but we are hopeful that this year it'll go smoother. January 2021, the institutional profiles will be available to the institution. Let's talk a little bit about the manual itself. It's laid out with an introduction, which has the overview, what's the purpose, changes, and timeline. Chapter 1, general instructions. Chapter 2, data definitions. Chapter 3 is the reporting application user's guide. And the last bit is the appendices. And the appendices are really the most important part of the unit record manual because it has the information you need in order to submit files to the portal. Just a little more information about the appendices. Appendix A is the need-based and non-need-based program recipients to report. So who do you need to report? Appendix B is the record layout, what's the file format, and what are the valid inputs. C is the system edits that prevent file upload and import. And D is quick lookup by financial aid program. So you can actually go there and see where it should fall based on this lookup. And then E is a quick lookup by the unit record report field name. So these are really useful and important that you use these tools when you're completing the unit record. The unit record requires the CSV file in order to submit it. And we know that CSV is probably not new to many of you, but we do have some new financial aid administrators. So we're going over a lot of the basics here. We want you to report only students who receive financial aid based on the 2019-20 FAFSA or WASFA. The report files have to be in CSV format with a header row. And that header row needs to have the rows the columns that we have laid out for you. You can see a sample CSV format on our website, and keep in mind it has significant changes for 1920. And for those of you who are new, WASFA, which we will be referring to, refers to the Washington Application for Student Financial Assistance. So that's the application that undocumented students or students who are not eligible for federal aid or for some reason don't want to apply for federal aid, they may use the WASFA. When you're building your CSV file, we want you to report only students who receive financial aid based on the 1920 FAFSA or WASFA year. The need-based recipients, when you're determining the students, we want your need-based recipients, the need-based aid recipients in other programs where the FAFSA or WASFA may or may not be available. And we'll go into a little more of what those programs would look like. And your non-need-based federal loan recipients. So the federal direct unsubsidized loan, federal direct parent plus loan, and the federal grad plus loans.
So we will be sending an update of the actual URR processing guide for CTC link, but through this presentation, we're going to give you some screenshots and a glimpse of how to run the report, what kind of data is on that report. So as you can see in the screenshot, there's a section in PeopleSoft. If you go to Navigator Financial Aid, CTC Custom, CTC Reports, State FA Reporting, you will be able to get to this screen where you enter your institution. Please put in 2020, and the file path is very important. Please make sure that it is entered the way that it's written on that screenshot, as well as the processing guide that I'll send you. Entering a lowercase when it's supposed to be capitalized can cause the system to actually stop other schools from loading files and whatnot. So please be careful about that file path. And you will leave that report type blank and then click run. And then after you click run, there's an option to choose the interim report, the Washington College Grant report, or the unit record report. Please choose that unit record report and click OK. And if all goes well, you will get several reports, which we'll mention further on in this presentation.
And we should have said this earlier, but Deb, why don't you introduce yourself? I'm certain that many of the people on the phone know you, but if you don't mind introducing.
Oh, yes. I see many friends. Hello, everybody. I'm Deborah Englehart. Everyone calls me Debbie usually. I moved to the state board in June, and I'm here to hopefully help you guys. Yes, I don't know what else to say, but hello, friends.
Thank you.
Thanks, Debbie.
So let's talk a little about underreporting requirements, what constitutes a need-based recipient. Basically, our intention is to capture all financial aid disbursements in a unit record report on a term-by-term basis. Report this year all financial aid received based on the filing of the 2019 FAFSA or WASFA. So if they received aid based on the information on the FAFSA or the WASFA, we want you to report them. Next year's report for 2021, we'll have the same training in about a year where we will tell you to report the 2021 FAFSA or WASFA information. So don't confuse the two. We do get that sometime. Debbie?
So to follow the guidance of WASAC, the CTC Leak Unit Record Report selects need-based recipients as well as non-need-based federal loan recipients.
So what programs should you report? In the need-based recipients, FAFSA fields that are required to be completed. So you can see the list as well as I. But what I want to go over is we do have some programs that are new or reinvented, and so I just want to go over some of those a little bit. We have the teacher shortage conditional grant, which requires the FAFSA or WASFA, and it was reported as a conditional loan in the 17-18 academic year. It wasn't funded in the 2018-19 academic year, but it was renewed or reactivated, if you will, in the 2019 legislative session. So that is back. The teacher shortage conditional grant should not be confused with the student teaching grant, which was available in 2016-17, and it was reported as other state-funded gift assistance. The teacher shortage conditional grant will now be reported in the teacher conditional scholarship category. The student teaching grant was funded for 1920 and will be reported in the teacher grant programs category. And just so you all aren't going on a big panic trying to write all this down, this is in the manual. So it's not something that you need to remember right here, but there are some new programs, and this gives you an idea of what we need you to do with those programs and how they should be reported. Other programs that are considered need-based recipients are the Federal Teach, Federal Health Professional Scholarships and Grants, the Federal Health Professional Loans. You'll notice that the WASOs has been split into two now. We have the VA Scholarship, which formerly was the Opportunity Scholarship, and starting this year, we the WASO's Career Tech Scholarship. Any other state-funded assistance, worker retraining, need-based institutional gift aid, and institutional employment, but only if it was need-based. This information is needed because it gives us a complete picture of state aid and what our students are receiving. The basic food employment and training programs are a subset of worker retraining funds. If your college receives these funds, we want you to report it under worker retraining funds. And we really would like you to report it if you can. If it's not easy to get out of your system, we understand, but it's something that if you can report it, we would like you to. The federal non-need-based loan recipients, those are the federal direct unsubsidized loan, the parent loan, the Grad Plus loan. The information will be minimal for federal loan recipients who are not also receiving need-based assistance. But if they're receiving even $1 of need-based assistance, they need to be reported. Debbie?
Hi, okay, so as mentioned here, the global setup for the CTC Link Unit Record Report has ethnicity category and award category. Please don't forget to, when you look at the processing guide that I send you, there is a section where it says to make sure that if there's any new ethnic groups that were created in student records, to make sure to add them. I did a test run for SFCC and there were 2, so please make sure to add those 2. And then award category, there's need-based FAFSA, WASFA, data required or optional option. There's a non-need-based loans or other award maximum amounts, and all of that is on our CTC link processing guide, which item type goes with which category, so that you can look at that instead of deciding. Institutional based configuration for CTC link report. URR ethnicity category linked to PeopleSoft ethnic group values. Again, that's not automatic. So there's a section that tells you how to find the new ethnic categories. And there's a section that in the processing guide where we will ask you to update the FA item types and award statuses. So for example, the one that you would not enter in is CARES. I don't know if WASAC has talked with you guys already, but the CARES item type will show up on your missing item type report, but that is not to be reported on CARES. On the unit record. So in the award category, please don't add CARES. And for SFCC, they had emergency FSCOG, so that would not be added as well in the unit record. But in the processing guide that I'll provide to you, there will be information on what kind of categories and what item types.
So changes for the 1920 unit record were pretty significant. We had a number of changes, even coming down to simply the name change from State Need Grant to Washington College Grant. But refer to page III in the manual. The program fields renamed in the CSV header file layout were the State Need Grant, relabeled to Washington College Grant, and the Opportunity Scholarship was relabeled to the WSOSBA Scholarship. We also deleted some header fields because they are now obsolete, the Federal Perkins Loan and the Get Ready for Math or Science. Basically, again, we're looking for consistency with other final reporting like Seesaw and your interim reports. I want to remind you that there will be a list again this year of any unserved students that didn't show up in the unit record for you to review and respond why they reported on the unserved list. And we'll go into this in more detail in her section of the presentation. But we will have unserved again this year, and you'll need to complete that list. New field additions to the CSV header file are the ICER WASFA transaction number. And we did talk a little bit about this when we presented this to financial aid folks. And really, why we need this is that in order for us to compare the information you submitted on the unit record to what's in Seesaw, we need to know from which transaction you paid. And the best way for us to know that is for you to put on the unit record what transaction you used to pay the student. We get we being WASAC, when we get all of the ICER transactions for a student, so you can imagine that if we get 12 or 50 transactions, RIT has in the past assumed that the student was paid from the most recent, which simply isn't the case. So we are asking you to add this so that we can really compare apples to apples instead of having to search our data to figure out which one you did pay from. The WCG apprenticeship is new. Passport to College Incentive Grant is new. In the past, you've only had the incentive scholarship, and so that's been added. The teacher conditional scholarship programs, the teacher grant programs, and the WSOS Career and Technical Scholarship are all new, so be aware of those new categories. Changes for the 1920 unit record portal is continued. This is where you have a little more information on the teacher programs. So formerly reported in the conditional loans, the following are now to be reported in the teacher conditional scholarship programs category. So the alternative routes to teaching, educator retooling, pipeline for educators, and the teacher shortage conditional scholarship. The student teaching grant program should be reported in the teacher grant programs category. We also have some programs under development. The Teacher Conditional Scholarship Programs category will be adding the Teacher Shortage Conditional Scholarship, the Teacher Career and Technical Education Program. And under the Teacher Grant Programs category, there will be a program for the Teacher Endorsement and Certification Help Program, aka Teacher Endorsement Program or State Teach Program. We also got a new National Guard Post-Secondary Education Grant Program. We refer to it as the National Guard Grant, and it's new this year for WASAC, and we've actually had a number of applications for that. So if you're interested in what it's about, you can see it online at wasac.wa.gov in the financial aid section. This is just a chart of the valid input ranges for the 1920 unit record. And every year we just take and updates from one year to the next what the changes to the dollar values are, and you can take a look at this. If you award in excess of the new value, the maximum amount, you're going to get an edit. So we did have a case last year, I just remembered an SEOG that was over the amount, and I thought, well, that's interesting. So we were able to contact the school, and they said, oh yeah, no, we didn't mean to do that. So it is something that you need to be aware of, is those maximums. Now, the Washington College Grant apprenticeships will not be separately reported for 1920. The funds will be, if there are any expenditures, it would be out of the Washington College Grant category. For all the financial aid recipients reported, the required fields that we have to have are the SSN, first name, last name, gender, are they a state resident, year in school, the financial aid per term, even if it's 0, and enrollment status per term. Report financial aid for each of the 5 terms, and we'll go over this in a couple of slides. Report enrollment status for each of the 5 terms, and report non-need-based aid received for all need-based recipients. The CSV file requires a header roll, and we do have that sample available so you can see it from our website. Financial aid reported for each of the 5 terms. So we have summer 1, which is primarily the leader or the first term of your age year. Fall, winter, keep in mind that semester schools would report the winter as 0s. Spring, summer 2, which is used primarily for the trailer awards or the last term. And clock hour schools may have awards for all 5 terms. That's the nature of the beast of clock hour schools. You could review Chapter 2 of the manual for detailed information of when you should include summer in your reporting. Summer aid reported are amounts received based on the 1920 FAFSA or WASFA, which is important when you're talking about your lead or trail schools. What FAFSA or WASFA year are you talking about? So in general, lead or header schools would report summer 1 aid and report summer 2 as 0. Trailer schools would report summer 2 aid, so summer 1 would be reported as 0, and I think it will come clear. Clock hour schools may report aid for both summer terms. If a recipient is enrolled more than 1 term in the same summer report, or those mini terms, many times between terms you may have in the summer two short sessions to make up 1, we want you to report the total amount received and the enrollment status as 1 enrollment term. Other fields to report for 1920 FAFSA and WASFA filers, as I indicated earlier, the ICER WASFA transaction number, marital status, dependency status, family size, number in college, family income, and we'll talk a little more about that in a later slide, expected family contribution, cost of attendance, need duration, and need amount.
We've come to a point between the 2 sections. What we're going to do is unmute the audience and entertain any questions that you might have. I see one here for Ashley. It says, what about the state work study grant? Will that be reported differently as those were students who state work study funds were given as a grant for guidance in spring?
The guidance on that, Ashley, is that any state work study funds that you paid out as grant will still be reported in the state work study, not separately.
Okay, thank you so much. And then, so Debbie, kind of a question for you with the unit record. I know you guys are doing a lot of testing, so that will pull both the different item types into that one field, correct?
You configure that. So,
yeah. Okay, sorry. This is all new to me, so just
no problem.
Thank you.
That's why we're here. It's okay. So now we're going to talk a little about special notes about some of the selected fields, just reminders and caveats of things that you need to be thinking about. First and foremost, in the bane of our existence, and probably yours, is duplicates for Social Security numbers will not upload. So it's really important that when you have your upload, you verify the Social Security numbers. Invalid SSN sequences are flagged. Don't use dummy numbers. Those are things like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, all zeros, all nines, all sixes. These are all invalid sequences, and if they do get through, we will be in contact with you because it has to be resolved. Normally, you will work with Ann to resolve these because she is the Social Security number guru. So if you have those issues, you'll probably be hearing from her. The SSNs of the Washington College Grant and College-Bound Scholarship recipients are compared to the SSNs reported in the WCG-CBS Seesaw records. So we do a comparison, and they need to match. The SSNs of Passport to College recipients are compared to the recipient portal records. And we will, there will be discrepancies, and it'll show on your edit reports. So it's just, Social Security numbers are how we identify students, and it is really important that they be correct. Year in school is another area that can be an interesting one. I don't know about you, but when I was in a school, a freshman would think that, or I would often get a person who was a senior in high school would put that they were a senior on the FAFSA. So that was something we always had to deal with. So I know that it can sometimes be hard to manage. But the year in school is required for all recipients, and we want you to report the status as of the beginning of the term of the recipient's last financial aid disbursement for the 1920 year. So this is where if they make a class change from, say, junior to senior, you report them as a senior if they were, their last paid term was as when they were a senior. So don't automatically use the year in school reported on the FAFSA or WASFA. Report the highest year in school for which the student attended when the student's financial aid was dispersed, and use Code 8 or other to report need-based aid for Running Start students or other students who have not yet matriculated into college. They have to be high school graduates, but you would use that code if you did give them, award them any need-based aid. Debbie.
So in line with WASAC's guidance, the unit record in the CTC link system reports the year in school with the following criteria. Value is reported as the beginning of the term for the student's last financial aid disbursement for the year. So for example, if a student was a freshman summer quarter but went through summer, fall, winter, but winter was their last disbursement and they were sophomore, then it will be reported as sophomore. There's a number value in the unit record. And then how they determine the year in school is combination of earned units between the ranges indicated in URR manual, which again, I will send, an updated version, whether or not the students are matriculated into BAA, BAS program, and the NSLDS loan year on the FA term. I think it's on that that third or fourth tab for financial aid. Yes.
So on family information, for family size, generally you're reporting the same information that's on the FAFSA or WASFA. It must be 2 or higher for dependent students because we assume the student and at least one parent, and 1 or higher for independent students. However, if the independent student is married, the number should be 2 or higher. Number in college must be 1 or higher, and it cannot exceed the family size. A parent's enrollment in college should not be included unless a professional judgment was performed to add them as one of the numbers in college. So if that was done and you have FAFSA that was resubmitted to include them, then add the parent to the number. Okay. Family income. What we want you to report for the unit record purposes is the taxable and untaxed income based on a review of the 1920 FAFSA or WASFA. Now, we understand that prior year is usually what's used, so this would be the 2017 income from the FAFSA or WASFA. However, if a professional judgment decision was made to use a more recent year, then you would need to report that income. Report integers without the dollar signs or cents. Keep in mind, this is the only place where you can add a negative number, and it can be used on the unit record. It's okay on this field. We'll come across another one where we don't want you to use a negative number.
I did want to mention one little caveat where the professional judgment decision was made and that income is reported. That should be updated through the federal processor or the WASFA and the Seesaw record updated, because that's something I will catch as I'm reviewing that section of the unit record. So we just want to make sure that you're aware of that. Debbie.
In the CTC Link system, the unit record report will pull from the Washington College Grant Eligibility tab. And the information there that it pulls is if the student is dependent, only the parents or parent taxable and non-taxable income are included. If the student is independent, both the student's and spouse's taxable and non-taxable income are included. And as mentioned a few minutes ago, negative family income values will be included if applicable.
We would like you to use the federal methodology expected family contribution from the 1920 FAFSA or WASFA. And the reason for this is that institutional methodology, if you use that as an institution, very often produces a different EFC that doesn't match federal methodology. The EFC may be adjusted by professional judgment decisions, and it should reflect the number of months reported in your need duration. So your cost of attendance, need duration, and EFC must be the same number of months. Cost of attendance, most campuses use several student budgets to reflect changes in living expenses. For example, at home, on campus, independent costs. So it's really, the cost is predicated on whatever that student is on your campus. Report the student budget amount related to the need amount. And it should be based on the number of months reported in the need duration. So the standard cost of attendance minus expected family contribution equals need. It's based on all three items on the number of months reported in the need duration. For the need amount, report the amount used in the disbursement of aid. And this is a field where you cannot, we do not want a negative number. Last year, Anne and I spent quite a lot of time cleaning up this particular field because need amount 0 is the lowest it can be. So please, as a reminder, don't, if they have a zero need, then put a 0, don't put a negative. We want you to report the need duration based on the number of months for which the need amount and cost of attendance were reported. Normally, you would report this as integers from 1 to 12. So the standard for most institutions is a 9-month, they assume a 9-month period of attendance. So in that case, if a student left after 1 term, you are not required to recalculate everything to 3-month duration. You can, but it's not required. And if you do it for 1 student, you need to do it for all. So you really need to think about what are your policies as it pertains to adjusting the student's cost, need, and duration. We want you to be consistent for the same period of time. This is a chart basically of the term enrollment status, and generally full-time is 12 or more for credit-based, clock hours 300 or more, and our unit record codes. This is the translation of full-time to 1, half-time to 2, 3/4 time to 3, less than half to 5. Typically, clock hour term awards are for full-time enrollment status, except that the final term may be paid for part-time enrollment status, unless, of course, a student is out of QER. Career schools, for every 300 hours of attendance, that equals full-time. And it's not unusual for a clock hour school to have 5 terms to report.
Debbie.
So for the CTC Link system unit record, this is just a confirmation of where the data is being pulled for term enrollment status. It is being pulled from FA load field on the FA term page. And those are the values. F is for full-time, T is for 3/4 time, H is for half-time, L is for less than half-time, and N is for not enrolled, and it is included in your CSV data file.
For clock hour institutions, this is what this chart lists, the approximate term date ranges. Most clock hour schools fall within these ranges, but it's just to give you an idea. We want you to report the final awards and enrollment levels of students at the time of disbursement. The unit record reporting tool checks against the seesaw records. And I've mentioned it a couple of times already, but this is really critical to remember. We are comparing the unit record data against the seesaw record information, and if it doesn't match, we have to resolve it. Review the WCG, CBS, and Passport differences report to verify that all the recipients and awards are correctly reported. Required for the 1920 academic year, an accurate representation of all forms of assistance that needy students are receiving is needed. Include the full assessed tuition and fee amounts in each student's cost of attendance to reflect tuition prior to the application of waivers. And this we've had this in the past, but for 1920, it's required that you report the tuition waivers before as part of cost of attendance. Don't subtract cost of attendance based on what the tuition waiver is going to be. We need the full assessed cost. Report waivers as a financial aid resource in the appropriate field, so it's either need-based institutional gift aid or non-need-based institutional gift aid. So whatever your waiver is, you need to report it as such. For state work study, we want you to report on-campus and off-campus employment separately, and report the student's total gross earnings, including employer match or institutional share. Include summer employment. Report either the actual gross earnings based on the monthly cutoff dates or institutional payroll dates, and the average gross term earnings over the academic year for all terms the student was enrolled at least half time. And this is where, regardless of, because of COVID and the guidance that we issued, if you did use State Work Study funds as a grant, you would still report that portion that you spent as a grant included in the State Work Study total. Jeff and Debbie will be checking against what they have received and what they've processed to make sure that it's in the ballpark. We want you to report institutional gift aid as either need-based institutional gift aid, and that's aid where all institutional grants, scholarships, and or waivers are awarded solely or partially based on the 1920 FAFSA or WASFA. They were awarded to meet need. Or non-need-based institutional gift aid, and those are institutional grants, scholarships, and or waivers awarded without regard to the WASFA or FAFSA. And this would include institutional funds awarded to Running Start or non-matriculated students. They would be captured here. There are other state-funded gift assistance programs that might not be reported anywhere else. And this is a list of some of the examples: the American Indian Endowed Scholarship, Early Achievers Opportunity Grant, the Global Opportunity Grant, UW only, Gold Star Book Stipend, Student Emergency Assistance Grant, Supporting Students Experiencing Homelessness, the pilot program in Washington Scholars. So these are just some examples of those that aren't reported anywhere else.
Okay. Let's take a look at whether we have any questions. Tammy has asked, did the state board automate this, or is it still manual? Tammy, could you elaborate on that? There isn't enough detail at this moment for us to understand which question it is you're asking about.
The need duration is a huge manual process that we have to manually fix, along with the cost of attendance. At SEC, we were trying to do it each quarter, but then you rerun some processes and it overrides it. So you really can't update it until the end of the year. We attended the Alliance Conference, the one that was in Spokane, and I know that the state board, Stephanie and Alan Michael, I think you were there too, and Central Washington had built something that did this automatically. And the last word, and it's been quite a while, that I had with Stephanie was that she was, because we had a ticket out there, she was working on something, and I've never heard anything. So I'm just curious, is it still manual to do the need duration?
The good news for you, Tammy, I understand it was very manual when I did it last year as well. The good news is that we did create a process. So it is manual as far as you'll have to create a run control that you'll run, but it'll basically change the budget duration for to 2, 3, 5, 7, whatever those numbers are. And then the last remaining thing that I'm currently testing right now is even if the need duration changes, you still need the cost of attendance to change. So that portion I'm working on right now, but I'm hoping that, yes, that the system will do it for you after you run that run control. And after we run a process, it should clean up most, if not all of those issues.
So are you recommending that we hold off uploading it? Because I'd like to get this done right away, and I don't want to upload it into WASAC if there's that process that you're working on right now will automate it.
Right now, Tammy, since there's been a lot of, as mentioned earlier, there's been a lot of field changes in the CSV. The new one is not in the system yet. So you won't be able to upload it to the WASAC portal just yet.
Okay. Can we run anything right now just to kind of clean up our own data, or do we hold off on everything?
We encourage that you run it. And we ran it yesterday in testing for all 3 schools. So you can run it. Basically, the reports are there. The errors will come out. It's just when you do the final, we want you to have the correct CSV. So you can start running the unit record if you wanted to start the cleanup. Yes.
Okay. Perfect. I hope it works. Thank you so much for your work on this.
No problem. I think all are great directors are here, so please don't upload anything into WASAC portal. You're welcome to run the reports because it takes some time to fix some issues. So you can run the reports as much as you want, clean up, it doesn't break it. It's just we will inform you when the new CSV is available. So please don't try uploading it into the WASAC portal. I tried it today to see what happens and you get a lot of red. So I advise against it.
So on edits, this section's talking about edits. And basically, we run edits to help ensure data quality. It's how we can do the comparisons that I've really talked about a little bit today, to make sure that what you are submitting is accurate. There are softer edits for students receiving only non-need-based federal loans or for aid that is not based on the FAFSA or WASFA required aid types. I'm coming back to the importance of the appendices, but Appendix C on page 46 lists the edits that will prevent the file upload. So just some examples of that is if you've got a header row missing or it's invalid, this famous duplicate SSNs, any invalid codes, and if you report blanks in a required field, that will prevent the file upload. There are a total of 12 items that will prevent the file upload. You should review these and make sure that your data is clean. There are some non-overrideable edits as well. They're listed in Appendix C, pages 47 to 49 in the manual. You can't override a total aid reported as 0 or non-resident with a WCG or other state aid. They have to be a resident of Washington in order to receive state funds. If your number in college is greater than family size, that will throw a non-overrideable edit, and if you don't have a valid institutional state work study allocation in the portal. If your file upload worked, but then there's secondary edits that are run, they will require you to correct the student record before you can submit your file. We also have some overrideable edits, and here are some examples of those. They're in Appendix C, pages 47 to 49. If your need amount is 0 with need-based aid, so your budget changed with dropped credits, you can override that information. Your year in school for aid type, for example, your federal Grad Plus loan. So the student was an undergraduate and then graduated and went to a grad program. You can update that information. And your date of birth outside the normal range. We have a very broad range for age in this. And so if it's outside the normal range, very often we think it's probably a mistake, but it could be right. So it's just something you want to verify and override if you need to. And you can override cost of attendance minus expected family contribution, which is calculated by the edit program, if it doesn't equal need amount reported by the college. Debbie.
So there are several edit reports that get created along with your CSV when you run the URR process in the CTC Link system. It's not logical, but I will say that please don't go in the report A, report B, report C order. Please start from report C. Okay, because the report C tells you what missing item types you have. So like I mentioned in CTC Link, you can run the report multiple times, as Tammy was talking about, to get things fixed, see what's been fixed, what's new, or whatnot. So we recommend that you start with report C. As I mentioned, CARES will probably show up for you guys. Emergency FSCOG will show up. Actually, this is where you will see the State Work Study Grant item type if you haven't configured it already at the point that you run the URR. So it gives you some item types that you decide whether or not it should be in there, or it should be in there, or it should not be in there, and then you can rerun the process before moving to report B and C. So next slide is report B. error detail and summary report, this is where you'll see different errors such as social security number missing. We used to have that every year when a Running Start student gets some funds. So it'll tell you which students are not part of the CSV, and if you need them in the CSV, you'll have to probably edit something in the system. So that report's the next report that we recommend you running. And then report A. Report A is the student detailed report. That's what we used to run to find all these budget need duration errors is what I used to run it, but you won't have to run it for that, thankfully. But that's a really good report. It gives you an outline of what kind of information's on the CSV that you'll be entering into the WASAC portal.
So just a few reminders. Keep your override comments concise and to the point. However, they need enough detail so that we know how you're addressing the edit message. So sometimes we don't know your shorthand, so say enough so that we know what it is you're saying. Report your family income using the Washington College Grant income calculation, not federal total income field from the FAFSA. And you heard through this presentation that CTC Link is pulling the fields that are required. But it should match the income reported in your Seesaw student record for 1920. A couple of items that just you might be interested in is that when you're calculating dependent student, it's the parent's adjusted gross and non-taxable income. The student is not included. And conversely, for independent students, you count the student's AGI and non-taxable income and that of their spouse if they're married. For both dependent and independent students, you want to use the sum of all taxable plus non-taxable income if the AGI is not present. So, for example, if they're a non-tax filer. There are some allowable exclusions, and those are primarily from the FAFSA, things like your AmeriCorps benefits, earnings from work under cooperative education program, any taxable scholarship, that kind of stuff. Those things may be exclusions, allowable exclusions, not used quite so much in my memory. Title IV grant aid should be subtracted from the base income regardless of whether it was taxed or untaxed. And something that is often missed is that child support income must be excluded from income calculations for less than half-time students, but not from other enrollment categories. So that pertains specifically to less than half-time students and child support income. And then veterans benefits are treated in the same manner as for the purposes of eligibility for Title IV financial aid. More reminders. Report an adjusted expected family contribution according to the need duration if the student attended less than full-time, full year, if it's your standard practice to do so. Your need, cost of attendance, and duration must all be consistent. Report all known race categories for each student, even where Hispanic origin is marked Y. This eliminates gaps in the research data, which is important to our research folks. If you award a student full-time, full year, and they do not attend half of the year, if it's not your standard practice to review the cost, COA, EFC, you're not required to do so for purposes of the unit record. However, if you award for other than 9 months, you must adjust all elements to match.
So some basic steps that you probably are already used to, but you would start with reconciling awards and then add or update the unit record, report configuration tables. Again, I'm hoping to send out to the first links the updated URR processing manual by the end of today or first thing tomorrow morning with all the different categories, what we need configured, what item type, what category. I hope to have that out to you real soon. So you would run the report, again, you won't break the system by running it as many times as needed. It's not like the FA term build process that takes 45 minutes. So it shouldn't break anything. I can't say never, but it shouldn't break anything if you run it multiple times. Review reports and correct errors, rerun unit record report, and then again, right now you can download the CSV, but if you try to upload it in the testing portal, there's like 5 missing fields. So you'll get a lot of red errors like I got today, this morning when I tried it. So please hold on tight. We are trying to get that out to you guys as soon as possible.
Tips and best practices. We want you to upload your CSV file early, although you have to wait until it's ready. And don't wait for the deadline. It's really, the earlier you get it, the better it is for everybody. And I know that the FISAP's due in October, and we all have competing deadlines. So the earlier you can get this to us, it's one thing off your plate. Review the 1920 Unit Record Manual and training materials and test your upload in the portal training environment. And I want to make a note of the URL for this. It's portaltraining.wasac.wa.gov. And we just recently learned, and I was actually a victim of this, WASAC isn't using fortress.wa.gov anymore. We were redirecting anybody who was at Fortress into the appropriate site. That's gone now. So you do need to use this URL, and you want to verify your URL for the portal as well. Just make sure you're using the right one, and I think Ann will go over that in her section. Use the unit record informational reports to check for consistency and validity. And for the CTCs, best practices to review the SBCTC 2019-20 Unit Record Processing Guide when it's available. And if you have any questions or problems that we haven't addressed or that are not in the Unit Record Manual, please contact us. That's why we're here. We're here to help you as best we can.
Hi, this is Tammy. I do have a question. Right now, it's only affected Tacoma and SCC, but it's the ABE coursework. And I know there's a lot of CTCs coming on board that have an overwhelming volume of ABE coursework. And at this point, when we upload into WASAC's portal, we'll have students that might have received only been in ABE coursework for 1 or 2 quarters and receiving some type of fund that we don't keep track for the unit record, but they error out because let's say they were in an ABE coursework with some kind of a waiver fall, then they became a financial aid student winter and spring, so everything will error out because there's no budget or cost of attendance for their fall record. And so we spend a lot of time editing and putting in messages for this. Is there anything that's going to be done in the future where it just overlooks that? I see Carla's question. Yeah, we are reporting enrollment for the quarters that they're receiving financial aid, but we're not reporting the enrollment for fall, but they still want to know why we have funds in there. So either we take out the funding, it's still going to be an edit message. We're going to have to either override it manually or, it's still a workaround.
Okay. Carla, so you are unmuted if you have the opportunity to just go ahead and address right over the audio feed.
Tammy?
Yeah.
What edit is it throwing when you enter that?
Gosh, I'm sorry, I don't have my unit record information. It's after I've uploaded it, it just says that you've got an award in there and you're not reporting any enrollment.
Yeah, right. I was going to say, I think it was that there was no enrollment. It showed not enrolled for fall, but you were including, award amount payments. And Carla, correct me if I'm wrong. I thought the advice we gave out last year was that they were not to include those aid amounts if they were ABE students and were not considered to be need-based aid recipients that were actually enrolled in.
Right. What type of aid are you giving them, Tammy?
There's a waiver. It's the non-needy waiver funds, but there's no way to take that out because in the way we run our reports from PeopleSoft, it automatically just puts it in there. It doesn't come up in any edits, so I don't know about it until it's already been uploaded.
So is there an award code type or, I don't know PeopleSoft language, but you know, like a FAPC code that you don't report for any need-based aid. So you could, in your control tables, where you would say, do not include the following award codes, you could say, do not include this waiver type, and it would then not populate that data when you're doing the upload.
Okay, I can play around because I know we have separate item types, and it's just it's only used exclusively for ABE, and it's like $25. You'll only see $25 on there.
Okay, because if there's a way to suppress that, you know, like in the past, we could enter a specific FAPC code, for example, that we used for that type of aid, and say do not include, and then it wouldn't populate those terms for that award code. It would only populate the terms for the standard aid eligible ones.
And I need to go back. I honestly don't think that there is, but I need to go back in and look because, like I said, it's just a lot of manual work once it's loaded to type out a message for all these students explaining the reason.
And so, Anne, another option might be to look at a canned edit or canned override, where it's just a drop down, and it would say something to the effect of adult basic ed, non-need based aid recipient, 2 terms or whatever the edit pop is that it ties to.
Yeah, but it would still require, Tammy, them to go in and
They would need
put
to write
the edit.
in.
Right,
Right
they
now,
have
the
to
unit
do the
record does
drop-down.
not have any canned edits or any drop downs for that.
Just a wish list. Hey, I'm happy about the need duration this year, so just a wish list.
Well, it would be cool if PeopleSoft allowed you to suppress, you know, whatever a type of program or a specific fund code, you know, that would be a good thing. So,
Yeah,
Debbie, if you're
heads
listening.
up, all the schools that have come on board are going to be doing a unit record. I'm sure this is going to come again, so just a heads up.
Oh, absolutely. Keep in mind that we also, I mean, while you do all that work, then we get at the back end and we review those, and it's like, what is this? And we go in and look at them as well. So it would be an advantage not just to you, but to us as well. We wouldn't be looking at things that really we don't need to look at. So that would be a plus for both.
And Marla, do you know, do we see that from our other PeopleSoft schools?
Do we see what? Yes, we see them all. If they award ABE, they do. And the reason I know this is they all fall to the bottom of our when I run a cost of attendance, you know, a list. All those fall to the bottom, and so I spot check them, and they're almost always ABE.
And if they are ABE, I think at this point I know to just verify that override.
Yeah.
But it does mean that the school has to go through and do them individually. We don't have any kind of a canned or drop down. That was one of those things that we've asked for in the 3.0. The 3.0 unit record 3.0, but that isn't currently in process. It may be a little while before we can get to that reformulation of this portal. So,
yeah, it'd be cool if PeopleSoft had some way around that.
Right.
Well, thank you, guys.
Sure. Are there any other questions before we move forward? As most of you know, there are a couple of ways to enter the unit record on the portal. If you use this direct address at the top, this is the updated link to the portal. There is another way you can get to it by selecting the portal on our main WASAC webpage by going to the administration link on the WASAC website and then selecting the portal from the drop-down menu, it will take you to this landing page. Once you're here, you are able to log directly into the unit record report by clicking this link. It will ask you for your logon at that point, but once you've entered your login information, it takes you directly to the unit record. If you're going to be working from any of the other programs that you may have access to, you can complete the login here and then work in whatever other program you have before you enter the unit record. If you've used that generic login to the portal, you would go to the Home tab, and Programs is one of the options, and Unit Record is what you would select from that drop-down. It will take you to this landing page, which is the login you'll see at your first time entering the unit record for the year. Once you have entered or uploaded any information into the unit record report, if you are partway through processing your unit record and you log out and then come back in, it will bypass this screen and it will take you to whatever step you last ended at, whether it's ready to begin, in progress, or submitted. For first-time logins to the unit record, you would click Proceed to Upload, and you will browse your PC and locate your CSV file. It does need to be in CSV format. If you attempt to upload something in an Excel format, it will not load. So once you have located your file, click this upload button, it will start to process. And if it's a large file, you will see this processing bar towards the top of the page. If it's a fairly small file, it goes by so rapidly you won't even see this processing bar. Now, if for some reason your file has a major issue with the upload or with the CSV header, you will see an error message, and it will not upload your file. At that point, you would discard your file, but before you do that, make note of whatever edit errors it provides to you. It will identify which row in your file to find that and what the error name is. Once you've discarded your file, you can make your corrections to your upload file and then attempt another upload. On the other hand, if you have a good file and it is in the middle of processing and you have a large file, but realize that there is something in that file, perhaps you selected the wrong file, you can discard that file mid-upload. So as soon as you do that, it will interrupt the upload and delete the defective file mid-process. What this does is it alleviates the long wait time, and for the most part, I'm thinking of the large schools like UW or any of the private colleges that have many thousands of records. But it is useful. Once the file upload is complete, you will see a summary of all of your class counts. Just take a quick peek at that and see if those look like they are correct. If so, then click on this Proceed to Edits button. Otherwise, you can discard the upload at that point and start over. Once you have uploaded your file, there are initial edit processes that take place. As long as you see this refresh button, That means that the portal is still going through that edit review, even though it may start to download some of your edits for review. You can start working on this while you're waiting for the full file to be completed, but please be aware that if you see that refresh button, you can click it at any time to have the portal upload additional edits. Once that refresh button has disappeared, it means that your file is totally ready for you to edit and review. You can sort your file, and there are a couple of ways to do that. There is this drop-down menu where you can filter by edit type, which would be this large column here, or you can click on any one of these fields and it will resort your file. Be aware that if you sort by edit type rather than by the Social Security number, once you open a record for edit, you will see all of the edits associated with that student. In order to edit your student record, you would click on the Social Security number. One thing I want to mention is this little red stop sign icon. That is the sign of a non-overrideable edit. That means that when you open that student record, that particular edit error must be corrected in order for you to move forward with your processing of that file. All of these others, if you don't see a stop sign, it means it is an overrideable edit. And you see here that once you have entered that record and made either an override comment on this main edit page, it will show as overridden. All these others are edits that have yet to be processed. Once you click the Social Security number, it will open up the student's unit record. All of the edit errors associated with that record are shown at the top in red. And if they are overrideable, you will see an override button. If it is a non-overrideable error, that same little stop sign icon will be shown. In order to make corrections, you would click directly into whatever field needs to be corrected, and you can make your changes directly in the award fields or any one of these term categories. Be sure that once you have made a correction that you save your change. If you choose to do an override because you feel you have a valid reason for the discrepancy that we're editing, this pop-up box will show up whenever you click that override button. You would enter your comment there. As Marla said, we appreciate those that are succinct and concise, but we do want to be sure that you've given us enough information that we can understand whether the override is valid or not. If there's a lot of information that doesn't seem to be pertinent to that override edit, we will call you and ask you for more information. Be sure once you've entered your override comment that you save that particular little pop-up. And you can double check that because when you go back to the record itself, it will be grayed out. And if you hover your cursor over that little blue icon, there will be a pop-up where your comment will show. Once you have addressed all your edits, go back to that main edit page and click this button to continue. That will take you to the differences reports. There are 4 tabs, and in each of those you will see not only the edits that were visible on that main edit page, but there may also be a few others. So it's critical that you make sure to review each and every one of these tabs. If you've already processed an override edit on a record, you will see in that final column, override requested, the word yes, and an icon that same thing. You can hover your cursor over it, and it will provide you with the override comment that you have already entered. If there are unaddressed overrides, then that column will be blank for that particular record. And quite often you don't see this so much because there is something that was entered into the unit record. Often it's an omission, which means that there isn't something on the student record that we find in our Seesaw records or other places within our portal. In this instance, we have a passport record where the student received monies, but it doesn't show that in the unit record. In this instance, you will need to go into that record, the unit record for that student, in order to make a correction. Since these are 2 separate people and you see that the Social Security number is not highlighted, you aren't able to go into the unit record for that particular individual from this screen. How you would make a correction to that record would be to go back up to the top of your screen, and under the unit record main menu, you should see a search button. So once you click that, that will open up your student's record once you put in the Social Security number. On the other hand, if you don't have a unit record for that individual, then you will need to add a record, or otherwise be in touch with us to let us know what needs to be done in that particular instance. As I mentioned, if you need to add that unit record because it's missing, you would go back to that main edit page and click this button that says Add New Unit Record. That will open up a new blank unit record that has both tabs, both the Demographics and Need tab and the Student Aid tab. Be sure that you complete all of the information on both tabs and then remember to save. And I'm thinking I want to mention something here that I don't often mention. Right next to the Save buttons, there is Previous and Next. If you're working through a series of those records on that main edit page, once you have saved whatever changes you have made to that specific record that you're working on, you can then click this Next, and it will bring in the next record. So rather than going back and forth to that main edit page, you can click the Next button. Otherwise, you can go back. If you're working with your records in a different fashion, you can actually go back to that main edit list from here as well. On that Student Aid tab of the blank record, you will see all 5 of the term options at the top. They default to not enrolled. So if you're adding a new record, make sure that you click the drop down for each of these and indicate what the actual enrollment for that student is for the term. And then I've put these side by side, but on the unit record itself, all of these are in vertical order, both first the federal and then the state and then the institution and other programs. So be sure that you fill those out. Now, the fourth tab of this differences report are the missing unserved students. And what this is are the unserved students that you have entered into Seesaw for whom we do not see a unit record. All of those students for whom there is not a unit record, but for whom you had added an unserved status in Seesaw will appear on this list. And we first ask that you take a quick look at it. It may be more than one page, but the first item of business is to download this report to a CSV file. And then we are asking that you will make corrections to that and then send those back to us. When you download that CSV report, the top half of the screen has a copy of what that report will look like. I've highlighted with a red box each of the columns that initially are blank that are associated with the various enrollment terms. So here for Summer 1, unserved, and then the verification column. There is a column here, column H, where if that record across the row for that individual student is correct and no changes are necessary, you would put a yes in that column, which is an indicator that nothing needs to be corrected on that record. If for some reason you see that here in fall it shows less than half time and that student enrolled full time, you would mark that change in the verify column associated with that term. And the bottom half of this screen is an example of that completed report. So here for Betty Bryant, all of the information is correct. You notice there's nothing in those additional verify columns. That means that the information provided to us was correct. For Erin Andrews, the fall originally was shown as not enrolled, but they were enrolled less than half time. Be sure that you put it in the verify column. Do not overwrite the initial information that's downloaded in the original column for fall. And the same thing here. Winter showed as not enrolled and they enrolled half time, so that information is put in the winter verify column. This is important. We do make corrections to the Seesaw record based on what you provide to us in this information. So we do want accurate information about the unserved. I will make one additional comment. Because WCG is now fully funded, we do not anticipate that there will be any unserved reported in Seesaw from this point on. This particular differences report will disappear from next year's unit records. So this is the last year that we expect that you will have to complete and return this to us. Once you've completed the report and saved it to your PC, send it back to us. There is a button on this discrepancies screen. If you do not see this button, you may be in the alternate discrepancies report area that shows up on that main edit screen. There is still a way to send us that email. That is to go to the file forms and memos section from your, I believe it's in the common drop-down box at the top menu, and then select your inbox and send it to us as a secure file. So you can send it to us either way. We place this send an email button here because it just makes it more convenient for you. I do want to mention that if you identify any Social Security number mismatches in your unit record, that will generate an edit. If the incorrect Social Security number originates outside of the unit record, say in Seesaw, you will need our assistance to correct that. Use that same send an email button and send us an email. It does come to us securely, where you tell us what the incorrect Social Security number is, and then very clearly mark what the correct Social Security number for that student is, and then we will contact our IT department, who will then make the correction in Seesaw. On the other hand, if you recognize that the incorrect Social Security number is in the unit record that you've uploaded, make the correction directly in that student's unit record. And you can do that, once again, from that search function at the top of the screen. Once all of these edits in the 4 differences reports have been addressed, you can click to continue to move forward with your submission. If for some reason you recognize that you need to add another new record, or for some other reason head back to the edit list, there is a button here where you can, once again, head back to that main edit page. At this point, you're very close to being able to submit your unit record. This is the institutional totals report. It is a comparison of the last 4 years of data for both dollars and programs that you've reported, as well as the number of recipients for those programs. We do take a look at the percentage change between the last 2 years. And so what we ask is that you take a look at this report, scan it to see whether all of those figures appear to be correct, and just recognize that if there are large percentage differences, we may very well be checking back with you to be sure that we understand the reason for that. The one caveat that I want to mention with this report also is that it is a preliminary report. So at the end of our review process, we will eliminate from your unit record all of what we call extraneous records. And those would be records for which the recipient had no need-based aid or no federal loans. So those records will disappear. What happens sometimes is it will change those dollars and the numbers of recipients and the percentage change between years. So what we ask that you do is that you download a PDF of this page for your records and mark it preliminary at the time that you're first submitting your unit record. And then once the institutional profile reports are available in January, that's your indicator that we have deleted all of the extraneous records, and we ask that you go back into the reports menu and download an updated copy of this for comparison. And the reason this is important is sometimes during that review process, we may have a question about some of the information and the percentage differences, and you can have a sense of whether it's those extraneous records that have made the difference, and it's something then that you would be able to respond to our questions by, having those two as a comparison to what you've downloaded for the current year. Once you've taken a look at this report and everything looks correct to you, click to continue. If for some reason you recognize that perhaps all of the information for a program in which you've expected to see a different set of numbers of recipients or dollars may have been misreported in the wrong category, you can go back to this main edit list and make your corrections. If you do that, we encourage you to edit records rather than delete your upload, because if you delete your upload, it clears out all of those overrides that you may have entered. So usually, unless it's an extensive correction, we ask that you edit each of the individual records rather than delete the whole file and start over. So once you've clicked to continue, it will take you to the final Submit Your Unit Record button. If you click this, a pop-up will show, and once you have clicked this OK, you will no longer be able to re-enter your unit record for additional edits without WASAC help. And that isn't a big issue as long as you are able to get back to us fairly quickly, and we can go in and reopen right away for whatever correction or edits you realize need to be made. The issue is if you wait quite a long time and we've finalized your report already, that requires the assistance of our IT department to reopen. And it takes usually a day or two, sometimes 3, depending on their workload. So if indeed you recognize there is an issue with any of the records that requires a reopening, we ask that you get in touch with us sooner rather than later. Once you've clicked the Submit and OK buttons, this will take you back to the reports page, and you will see in a couple of different areas that you have been confirmed as submitted. At that point, you can click the log out and exit the unit record altogether. If you did not make a copy of your reports, this is an opportunity before you leave the page this is that program totals report that we talked about with the 4-year comparisons. Other reports are the demographic distribution reports, and you can also download a copy of all of the differences reports at this time as well. You can come back to this page at any point, and that is by just going to the unit record report and then going to this reports tab, which will bring this all up. I do want to mention that these 3 reports are available to you only until we close out the unit record and prepare it for the following year. Once we have done a final close and reopen the unit record for the new academic year, all of these initial 3 reports disappear and are not available to you. So we do suggest that if you're going to take copies that you do it both now and in January, because the closer we get to the following August, once we are ramping up for that new year, these do disappear. The 4 reports at the bottom are the institutional profile reports that will become available in January to you. Those, I believe, are always available to you. There is a drop-down on the unit record where you can select a year and get back to this. But this is the vetted data after all the extraneous information has been removed. Debbie.
The URR processing guide is available on the CTC Link Reference Center. As mentioned earlier, it's the 9.0 version still. So we're going to have the 9.2 version up shortly, but I will also email it to you with the new categories and whatnot Please feel free to contact the FAERP support team if you have any questions or need assistance with setting up or running the URR. I did send a ticket, not ticket, I sent an email to Marjorie, Danielle, and Ashley because there is something that I need to work with you guys on about the unit record. So please make sure to read that email before you try running it, because you will run into a surprise if you don't read my email first. So please look at that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, that brings us to the conclusion of this presentation. Where can you go for help? You can review the 1920 manual at the wasac.wa.gov/unit record, and you can contact the Washington Student Achievement Council staff at the unit record at wasac.wa.gov. And you can also contact any of us from our emails listed below, but we request that you use the unit record at wasac.wa.gov because the three of us on the call have access to that mailbox. So if someone's out, we can see that. A recording will be made available on the unit record page for 3 of the 4 unit record training webinars, whichever is most pertinent to you. We want to pick the best ones, of course, and those will be posted about a week after the last webinar. Both of the late August recorded webinars that were co-presented with the SBC TCIT staff will also be added to the unit record website about 1 week after the last webinar. We really want to thank you for your time and attention to this. And Anne just reminded me that we want to open it if you have any questions.
We want to thank you, and we look forward to working with you over the next several months as we receive your unit records and go through our review process. If at any time you have questions, please feel free to give us a call. That's why we're here, and we definitely would prefer to address your questions sooner rather than later. With that, thank you, and goodbye until next time.
Thank you, everyone. Have a nice afternoon.